Thought Bubble Audio.
Look, up in the sky!
You will never find the more wretched hive of scum and villainy.
Welcome to Beer with Geeks with Tim and Frank.
Who are you?
I'm Batman.
I am Iron Man.
Your friendly neighborhood Spider-Man.
Hi, Christopher. I'm Nero.
My name is Inigo Montoya.
You're a wizard, Harry.
A couple of guys with a couple of beers and a whole lot of pop culture nostalgia.
Make it so, number one.
Ladies and gentlemen, the Beatles.
I named the dog Indiana.
Life finds a way.
I am serious. And don't call me Shirley.
Now sit back and crack open a cold one, because it's time for Beer with Geeks.
It comes in paints.
Shaken, not stirred.
Great Scott!
I was way off. I knew it started with an S, though.
Hi, and welcome to Beer with Geeks, where two geeks geek out with beer. I'm Tim, and with me, as always, is my man who has opinions that I don't know about. It's Frank. How are you today?
I'm doing well. How are you?
Oh, I'm doing just fine, Frank. We're here to talk about geeky things, and I have a beer next to me, and so life is grand.
You have
life
have a beer next to you?
I do have a beer next to me,
Pray
and
tell, what beer is that?
It's not an exciting one. I'm sorry to say.
I will be the judge. I have opinions.
All right, yeah, you do have opinions. I mean, yeah, that was probably stronger than any of you. How you said that was probably stronger than any of your opinions that we might talk about today. But who's to say? I'm just drinking a Sam Adams 76 because I had 2 left in the fridge and 1 porch rocker, and I haven't been to the liquor store in a while. So I'm on the dregs of what was summer beer now that we're in winter almost.
Okay. All right, fair enough.
Yeah. So what are you drinking?
I'm drinking a Harpoon Flannel Friday.
Oh,
yeah,
that sounds fun. That sounds like it's an IPA.
It is an amber ale. It is a hoppy amber ale. Citrus, Simcoe, and Cascade hops combined with subtle notes of caramel and roast in this seasonal amber ale.
That sounds really good.
Mm-hmm.
That sounds really, really good.
It's very good. They make it the last couple of years they've been making it in the fall. So it's sort of their flannel. You put on your flannel and your Han Solo vest and your Ugg boots and
my Han Solo vest.
Yeah.
Yeah. Han, I want to see somebody edit like Han running down aisle like the Death Star hallways or whatever, but put him in Ugg boots.
Yes.
You can keep the rest. I just want to see him in the Ugg boots. See how that flies.
Yeah. Well, yeah, no, it's great. It's a really solid brew, and it is very folly. Like it's not as bitter and
dry.
Yeah, as a typical IPA. It's a little
more like a wet leaf than a dry leaf.
Yes, exactly.
Mm-hmm.
Yes. It's peak foliage, not leaves so dry they're falling off the tree.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
Gotcha.
Yeah. There you go.
Yeah. How are the leaves where you reside?
They're gone.
They're gone. They're gone for me too.
There's basically nothing left. A little peek behind the curtain for those listening. Recently, my wife and I moved. We're selling our home, and we're staying with some family while we wait to buy our next home, and for just a couple of months, probably just for the winter. And so we moved from Massachusetts to New Hampshire, and in just the couple of weeks we've been living here, we've gone from, there's still some leaves on the trees, that's nice, to nothing. It is just, I look out the window and I watch leaves just fall, and then there's just nothing left. So, so there you go. Yeah, where you are things? There's nothing either?
It's pretty barren. Yeah. There's some stuff left, but it's mostly in the back corner of my yard now.
Gotcha.
The entire state has just blown its leaves into the back corner
of your yard. The entire state has blown their leaves into your yard.
That is correct. I mean, it's not the back corner of the state because I don't live there. No. I live right in the middle of whatever state that is.
Yes.
No one. I mean, I'm sure I've mentioned it before, but it doesn't matter because that's not what we're here to talk about, Frank.
No.
I'm glad that you're drinking a beer, and I'm glad that I am. And when I
Me
said,
too.
Frank, we need to talk about something, and you said, let's talk about our feelings. And I said, I don't know how I feel about that. And he said, that's why we need to do it.
Exactly.
And I said, all right, well, that makes sense. But you said about DC Comics and the direction that they are taking. Is that correct? Is that is it comics? Is it film? Is it TV? Like, is it streaming? What is it? How are you feeling? Like, what specifically you're talking about?
What prompted this for me was comics, but honestly, it may have implications outside of comics as well. But a couple weeks ago, you sent me this news item from comicbook.com, written by friend of the show, Russ Burlingame.
Yeah, Russ.
And Russ reports that he was working on a report from Bleeding Cool. So this is not an official, but a report. And I don't know, Tim, correct me if I'm wrong. Has it been verified by anyone at DC since then? I haven't seen that, but I could have missed it.
I don't know what you are referring to because I have actually forgotten what I sent you. So please continue.
DC may be leaving their shared universe behind in 2021.
Oh, sure. Yeah. I honestly haven't been following it
That's
that
fair.
closely, so I'm not sure. I honestly thought when you said, like, when you were like, I have things that I want to discuss, I thought you were talking about Future State.
Oh, okay.
That's
well,
really what I thought you were going to talk about.
Future State meaning...
So DC was back in the Dan DiDio days.
Yeah.
They were going to do they were going to put out
5G.
5G, their next event, and it was going to be all about like basically like continuing to like merge all of the one could say mistakes of the past and like create a new continuity as they are wont to do every couple of years to keep it fresh. And that kind of fell apart. And part of 5G was going to be a new Batman, a new Superman, and a new Wonder Woman. And when Dan DiDio left the company, things kind of got reshuffled. But now we're looking at DC Future State, which is like a 5 years in the future. What does DC look like? And it's just over a 2-month period of books. Right. And so like John Kent is Superman. And there's an unknown new Batman that many people believe to be Luke Fox, and then the new there's a new Wonder Woman, potentially Wonder Girl coming. I'm not actually sure what the breakdown is, but it's Yara Flor, and she's Brazilian. She's the daughter of an Amazonian and a Brazilian river god, and so and that's as far as that's about what I know. A few things more, but anyway, so part of that might be that they're just transitioning into leaving continuity behind.
Yeah,
and it's just to tell a good story.
So I when you sent me that article, I had all these thoughts, and I think I even started. We were texting, and I think I started typing them out, and I was just like, "There's just too much to." There was just too much to put into this text message, so I didn't. And then it occurred to me this might be a good discussion for us to have. So leaving their shared universe behind. So according to what Russ shares, the rumors suggest that Future State would be a bridge to the new reality, the new way that they manage things across books, and it would be more of a, each book, each title is its own continuity. We're not doing crossover. We're not doing, we're not going to have to deal with the different continuity errors that inevitably crop up when you have a shared universe, and like, oh, but you said over in Green Lantern number 35 that this happened before the other thing. Like, that has always happened. That's why DC started having the big crossovers. Other obviously first and foremost to help readership, but they started doing that to like, okay, let's combine the worlds, right? And that's where you had Crisis on Infinite Earths, and then Infinite Crisis and Final Crisis. The idea was let's deal with the multiverse we've created here. or rather, the multiverse was a way of explaining away a lot of those continuity errors, and then they sort of said, "We'll create a new Earth and a new universe, and move forward from there." And they've had to sort of reset it every few years because, again, it's hard. Even DC can't keep track of everything that's happening in every book and how it might conflict with something in a completely different book. So this idea of leaving the shared universe behind is a really interesting move to me. In DC has spent the last decade and change trying to maintain mind share, right? Trying to stay in people's minds when compared with Marvel, because Marvel obviously has been hitting it out of the park in many different, in particular on the big screen, to some degree on the small screen. And in actual readership, I guess I don't know offhand, and I don't know if you do, Tim, like what actual readership looks like for the two big publishers.
It goes back and forth. Marvel still kind of has the upper hand, but sometimes it's interesting because the way that comics work, it's like you have to buy a certain amount. The store that's selling them has to buy a certain amount. To get like a certain cut on the price, to do this and this and this and this. So when it says like, oh, Marvel sold the most, that's actually really not readership. It's what store bought the most to get the price to then. And so it's not always exactly the same. You can see what titles sold the most from stores, and that matters. And a lot of times DC has a lot of titles that sell the most. And then you also have to look at bookstore numbers, which I think this is a big deal where bookstore markets and trade paperbacks are really, I think, what's driving this continuity thing forward. Because to somebody who's picking up a trade paperback every 6 months, they're probably not reading Green Lantern and Flash and Justice League and that second Green Lantern book, and The Outsiders and this and this and this. They're probably just reading The Flash, or they're just reading X-Men, or they're just reading Superman or Batman or Wonder Woman or Supergirl or whatever. And it's a little harder to keep track of continuity when you sell bookstore. It's a little hard to keep track of continuity when you are only reading the graphic novels, because like, how are you supposed to know that like third issue of Supergirl is a tie-in to Death Metal? Like, and it's just going to be randomly inserted, and you're like, wait, what is happening? And if you're really not up on any of that game, then you don't really care about what happened 50 years ago.
Yes, exactly. If you're reading in trade paperback, if you're the kind of person that wandered into a Barnes & Noble and picked up a trade off the shelf, and decided like, ooh, this looks interesting, and then they're making all these references to things you haven't read, whether that's past issues of the same book, or whether that's issues of a completely something from an event you haven't read, another book, you're going to be confused. And there has been an indication for, I mean, people have been talking about this for over a decade now, that the industry is going to slowly shift to the trade paperback model more and more. Yes, there will always be the single issues, because as long as there's a market for it, as long as people are interested in it. But the real money is probably longer term going to be in those trades, and being able to say, here is a graphic novel, here is something. And DC's toyed with that with their like Earth One hardcover series, for example, right? Superman Earth One, Batman Earth One. Those have been things that they've done where they're like, let's do more of a like prestigious novel that drops all at once as a graphic novel with our characters that people already know.
That's true. You do have to end up waiting. You wait longer.
You do.
For, so like you read the equivalent of maybe 4 to 6 issues of a periodical, a periodic comic version, and then you maybe wait to like a year, 2 years, 3 years for the next one. And you're like, what happened in that last one?
Yeah.
I don't remember.
Yeah.
So it has its drawbacks, because the regular comic release schedule, you get your 6-issue arc, and then a couple months later that's collected. Yes. And then you go through that again. So you're getting like one every. You getting the next bit of the story every couple of months, maybe every 5-6 months. You're getting the next one, the next one, the next one.
Right. So, and you know, and that's similar, at least in theory, to your typical novel, your typical all words, non-graphic novel, right? Where the book comes out, it's a big success, and then maybe it's 2, 3, 4, 15 years if you're George R.R. Martin, until the next one comes out, and so it would be shifting to more of that kind of a model. Whereas people who are reading periodicals are getting a new chapter in that story every month.
Right.
So it is a different model. There's also digital in this, right? So you can publish the whole thing digitally or piecemeal, monthly, digitally. And again, there's going to be people who are only subscribed to a couple of these stories. I mean, more and more, I'm really mainly a Superman reader, and I dip into the other stuff when it's going to help me understand the upcoming crossover.
Yes.
Or if there's a writer who I really like working on a title involving characters that I really like. But
yeah, I'm a writer follower.
Yeah,
mostly.
I follow writers a lot, but like if they're going to a character that I don't really care about, I'll pick it up first couple issues maybe, but I'll probably trail off. Jeff Johns's Aquaman New 52. I read the first few, and then I was sort of like, yeah, but I don't really care that. I don't care that much. Like, I don't care that much. But,
I have books like I certainly have books like that, and sometimes I like that writer on one character, but I don't really care.
Sure.
About the way that you're writing this other character, or it got weird, or it's boring, or just because they were good at one thing doesn't mean they're good at all things, and so there are very few writers that I find that I like solidly hold on to for a long time.
Right. So for me, the interesting thing about this possibility is that they are departing from the typical comic book, model that we've come to know in the last, let's say, 35, 40 years since Crisis on Infinite Earths. I'm going to sort of mark that as when the shared universe thing really came into its own. So they're being the first to break, whereas in most industry trends in certainly the last 20 years, they've followed Marvel. When it came to going digital, when it came to going to digital on day one, when it came to raising prices, when it came to all these different things, they have tended to follow Marvel. Be like Marvel does it first, and then DC says, you know what? We still believe in this thing that we're doing, and we're going to stand by it. And then when it's very clear that you can make oodles of money doing what Marvel's doing, then they say, you know what? We're going to do that too.
It's true, though you could say that the Marvel style of comic business actually dilutes the product, which is
that's
also
an excellent point.
Because Marvel's business model is really more about just buy the book. Not,
they do flashy
am I telling
things.
the best story?
Yeah,
they do the flashy thing to get you to buy it with the variant with this. It's almost like their 90s model. And that caused big problems for them in the 90s.
It did. All the holographic covers and stuff like that, right? Like all that stuff in the 90s. That was what contributed to the tanking of the comic book business. And then what they've been doing, their favorite tactic, maybe the parallel in more recent years to the shiny covers, is the renumbering, right? We're going back to Captain America #1 and doing that every couple of years. And that's a great way to get new readers on board because they see #1 and they figure, okay, this is a jumping on point. I can start.
I've been reading for over 15 years. It gets me, like, I still do it. I'm like, oh, fresh start. Okay,
when
let's
you've been
do this.
off, especially if you've been off of a book for a while and you're like, oh, but I do love Cap or I do love Spidey or I do, whatever. Okay, #1 with a writer that I like. Cool. I'll jump back on. It's worked on me a few times as well. But the interesting thing here is that it's DC doing something first. Like they're the first, and I'm saying first, they might be the only one, but I suspect that if this works out well for them, Marvel will follow for exactly the reasons you're saying. Marvel does the things that are flashy and maybe get short-term gain, but I feel like this is a long-term gain move as well. Like this may stop the bleeding of readership and keep a lot of readers in for a longer period of time because they don't have to do as much homework to stay up to date on a couple of titles.
Right.
You can read your Flash and your Superman and maybe dip in the Green Lantern every so often and not feel super out of it because they're talking about an event you didn't read or something that happened that you haven't read because it happened off somewhere else that wasn't directly related.
Yeah, I think it's funny because we've read comics for a long time,
sure.
And we do know a good chunk of the ins and outs of what's happened, this event here, this thing here, but it's not our whole world, and so I do miss things, and there is a thing called a budget, and this. There is kind of stuff like that people have to take into account because the stuff that gets referenced most of the time really ends up just being like, oh, remember Crisis on Infinite Earths? Yep, all right, good job, team. We remembered it. So a lot of writers won't go backwards and say, hey, that thing that happened in that previous writer's arc, I'm picking that thread up and running with it. Doesn't happen a lot.
Right.
Sometimes I've seen writers pick up their own threads from from different books. So James Tynion wrote Detective Comics for a while, and now he's on Batman, and he's picking up some threads from Detective Comics and continuing them in Batman. But you don't have to have read his Detective Comics to get the context. You're just moving forward. And so, because comics are in a constant in media res, right? You're always in the middle of the action, and you've got to catch up via the context clues. But if you...
And there's always going to be some of that. That's part of the format.
But if you can tell a story, so they're finding success with Black Label, right? In which you're okay, here's this Constantine story, and done. Here's this Joker story, and done. Here's this other Superman story, or this Batman story, or this Catwoman story, or this Wonder Woman story, and that's it, and you're done. And people go cool, I read that because I didn't have to worry about what happened 3 years ago because I didn't read those.
It's self-contained. It's a self-contained story, beginning, middle, and end. And everything you need is between these two covers.
Does that slap in the face of people who do like that long continuity? People who are I've been watching Supernatural for 10 years. I've seen every episode. Does that kind of slap it slap you in the face?
I think that there is room for both. There's room for the periodicals as well as there's room for TV and movies, right? You can watch a TV series for 10 plus years like Supernatural, like you're saying, but then you can also see a movie every couple of years that you really... You are correct, but I think this new model is moving towards there's only movies. Well, but I don't know if this rumor, and again, this is all rumor that we're working off of, but it doesn't say what the... I don't know if it actually says that they're going to move to a trade paperback model per se. It just talks more about don't be so caught up with what happened previously. Right. It's more about the continuity being more streamlined, less of a shared universe, and even with less of a shared universe, there is still opportunity for crossovers that happen separately, right? Before there was a shared universe, you had a Justice League title. And those adventures were on their own. What happens in the Justice League title is its own continuity, is its own set of stories, and it didn't cross over to what was happening in the Flash book and the Batman book and the Wonder Woman book. That's right. So you're kind of seeing that now, even you had DC. You had DC's Metal, right? You had Metal, yes. Which went into Justice League, which is now into Death Metal, but it's not touching any of the other stories around it. Any of the stuff that happened in Metal and Justice League, and now
death metal has influenced me reading Batman or Superman or Wonder Woman or Green Lantern or anything. Even though those same characters are in there, they just happen concurrently, and your brain just goes, whatever. It doesn't actually matter, because all you're really reading the book for is to see your favorite characters do cool things.
Yeah. And
that doesn't necessarily mean action. We've talked about a lot how some of the best superhero books are them just sitting around doing nothing.
Yes, we have. Yeah, for sure. I think it's so interesting that they are differentiating themselves, and that they are, for a change, sort of the first to do it. We'll see if others follow, and they can always in 5 years decide to do a big event that merges all the various continuities together again and call it, whatever, Crisis on Even More Earths.
Infinite plus Earths.
Yeah, exactly. Infinity plus 1.
Yeah.
Crisis on 52 Earths. But they can do that if they want to. If it doesn't work out, or if they decide like, okay, well, kind of feel like we've got a really cool direction we can go in now that we had an idea for, so we're going to do that now.
Right. But comics don't move in any particular linear fashion. I mean, Batman's been in his mid to late 30s for decades.
Sure.
Right? And so none of that truly matters. So like you have this future state coming up. What happens, like things that are happening in 5 years. Superman's off planet, being John Carter from Mars, and on War World basically, and Batman's still operating, but there's also a new Batman in town, and it's all 5 years. It's all 5 years in the future, but that's like, if you make a book like that and it's all in the future, whatever, I can read Batman for the next 16 years and he'll never reach that 5 years later.
Right.
Ever. Right. Because it's just a perpetual now. It's happening now, and that's actually all that matters.
Right. Right. That's exactly right. So both can exist, and you can even read both of them and enjoy both of them. And
I do.
And exactly. So I think it's super interesting that they're doing this, or that they're considering doing this, or that they've maybe leaked it to see how people react to it. And it comes at the same time that they have named a new editor-in-chief in Marie Javins.
Yes.
And so, that honestly, that announcement, which comes from Variety, and that is an official announcement. That announcement,
crazy that Variety is announcing things about,
I know,
like comics, like what a world we're in now.
Well, I guess because it's like, it is like entertainment, and it's related to, their big screen, small screen stuff too. But yeah, you're right. It is wild. The Variety of all places is entertaining comic book news, is reporting comic book news. They so in promoting Marie, she had been an editor. She had edited many popular titles. She did Justice League. She did Death Metal. Superman Smashes the Klan. So she's been involved in some. That was
good, by the way.
Yeah.
Recommend. Yeah.
She's been involved in some pretty high profile stuff the last couple of years. Clearly she's been on a high-ranking executive editor of Global Publishing and Digital Strategy. So she was probably being bred for a big move like this. Mm-hmm. And so the fact that this news, official news about her being promoted, comes at the same time at these rumors about a shift in strategy, the timing of that makes me feel like that rumor is true, or true to an extent.
Yep.
New leadership. We know that the 5G idea went away with Dan DiDio, and we've been sort of wondering since he left.
Retooled a bit. Yeah.
Since he left, I've sort of been waiting for the other half of the story, waiting for the other shoe to drop. Right, like he leaves, and the idea that he was really championing seems to be going with him. So, what's going to happen next? Like, sure, it could have just been Jim Lee, but I had a feeling that there would be some other announcement to come, and it seems like these are the two in tandem. These are the announcements that I was sort of waiting for. So it's very, very interesting to me that DC will. I've wanted so badly for them to, like, they tried in the movie arena to do like, okay, well, we're going to do one-off movies because we still believe in that. And then the MCU took off and they were like, we're doing a shared universe. Except maybe we'll do a shared universe, but then we'll also do one-off movies. And we're not really sure what we're doing, honestly.
Yeah.
We're not sure.
That's true. That's true. But the DC Comics so very all the time, I'm going to use a different phrase, gets confused with DC Film, with Warner Brothers Media, with Warner Brothers Film, with, you know what I mean? People just like kind of mix them together because like Marvel is the brand, but what happens in Marvel films like is not what's happening in the comics.
It's not the same
except
people.
for company synergy. It's not the same people. And DC, for some reason, people seem to miss that. Like things get thrown at DC, like, oh, well, it's all DC. I'm like, but it's not. That's like the magazine business versus the film business versus the TV business. It's different people. Mm-hmm. And so, like, I'd say the mismanagement of the DC film slate for so long is not reflective of DC Comics.
That's fair.
And yeah,
that's fair. What I would say is that there does seem to be a more conservative culture at AT&T, Time Warner, whatever the mega corporation is called officially now.
I think it's AT&T. Ooh, is it just AT&T or is it AT&T Time Warner?
I'm not sure. I'm not sure what the official name of the parent organization is anymore since AT&T.
Scheinhart Wig Company.
Scheinhart Wig Company.
Yeah.
And then you've got the microwave division. And, yeah. So there does seem to be a culture of being a little bit more conservative and being a little bit more tentative to dip your toe in the water of a new direction, whether that's in the print business or in the film business. They do seem to have that from the top, right?
It's true.
It trickles down from that kind of thing. Trickles down from the top. That kind of a like the big wigs won't go for it, so we can't go there. Even if like you're a print magazine company making comic books, you've been around for almost 100 years, and then you get bought out by a new company. Suddenly there's a new sheriff in town and you have to know like what you can pitch to them and what you can't.
That's right.
And there does seem to be a level of that conservatism and sort of like this
true.
has worked for us, so we think we should stick with what works and not mess with success, which is not in and of itself a bad theory of doing business.
I think there's actually a lot less of that very recently, really since that AT&T merger.
Yes.
That's really where we're starting to see things that like, let's take a risk on this. Like Joker was a risk.
Yes.
Like Harley Quinn and the Birds of Prey was a risk. Like even Jim Lee fighting for the Snyder Cut and HBO Max, that's a risk.
That was a big
risk.
That's a big swing.
Yeah. And so I'm seeing a lot less risks now, or a lot less conservatism now,
yes.
and let's swing for the fences. And to their point, the trickle down effect that's trickling into the periodicals.
Exactly. So without before, when it was just Time Warner. Was it still AOL Time? Never mind. It was still Time Warner. Without AT&T involved, there was that like attitude of like, we're not really sure what we're doing, and we're going to kind of waffle. We're going to say we're going to do one thing, and then maybe we'll try the other thing, and now we're kind of doing both. And
we'll hire somebody to do one thing, but we actually want something else, but not tell them that we want that thing. And
there was just a lot of that, and then like a lot of like second guessing and being like, oh no, this movie's no good. We're gonna have someone come in and recut and reshoot parts of it and just no, this isn't. We can't do that. We can't do this. This is too much of a risk. But it seems like AT&T, HBO, like there is much more of an understanding of what's a good risk to take. And maybe not all of them are going to pan out, but some of them are worthwhile based on the information you have at the moment. If people are having a hard time keeping up with your books because there's too much continuity, it's too hard to it's too hard to keep up. I mean, that's one of the reasons why Crisis happened in the first place in the late 80s, was because it was too confusing. Let's consolidate everything down to one. at least one thing per line, and if people want to follow that line, they can follow that line, and they're essentially doing that again, in a different way, and I think it's a really interesting move, a really interesting time to do it, and all the stuff we've talked about what the possibilities that opens up for different ways of publishing digitally as well as in print, in collected editions as well as in periodicals. I think it opens up all kinds of interesting future possibilities, and I'm really interested to see what happens and if this is something that ends up being adopted by the rest of the publishers as well, because it just, turns out that it's just a good idea.
I just thought that it really frees up the idea of where characters can be at any particular moment, which I like. So like, oh, you can't use Robin. He's in the Teen Titans.
Yes.
And you're like, so he can't be in this Batman book this one time. It's like, why not?
Why not?
Why not? Like, who cares if they're in two places at the same time? It doesn't have to be at the same time. This story that's 6 issues, it's going to be one book, takes place over one day.
Yeah.
So who cares if that's one day and that story over there takes 3 months, even if it's only 6 issues, even if it's still 6 issues, because guess what? There are a lot of days of the year.
That's right. Yeah. And like, who cares? Okay, so he's technically like at this same time he's supposed to be off world. Whatever. This is at a different time. It doesn't really matter when it was. Just read the story.
Just read the story. Shut up and read the story.
Do you enjoy the story? Great.
Yeah.
Like that's what it comes down to, and I think that's
yeah.
I think that's going to be cool. I think that's going to free them up for better storytelling.
I agree. The only downside to this that I really, a real downside is character progression. So like, let's say, Tom King had this like years-long Batman run, Batwoman, Catwoman, officially together. They're a power couple. They are in it to win it. If you go to the next book, where the hell is she?
Sure.
What do you mean she's a villain in this book? Like, because that writer didn't like that change, and you're not respecting that bit of continuity. So there is going to be some bit. There's going to have to be some kind of continuity.
They'll have to grapple with that,
within characters, So, but maybe not within whole universes. So you have to respect what the writer previously did with the character, but you don't have to worry about what the writer of The Flash is doing in Wonder Woman.
Yes, exactly. I think that's the impression I got from the story. And by the way, the link to the stories you've mentioned, the links will be in the show notes at beerwithgeeks.com. But I agree with you. I think that you do need to respect within a title. You need to respect what's happening in that title, because if you decide to just throw out I don't know, Spider-Man's marriage, then you're going to have big problems.
Yeah. Are you,
know what I mean?
Are you?
Yeah.
No, you are. Yeah. So much so that you're going to come up with an even a weaker story to get it back.
Yikes.
I know. Ugh. Time to be alive. That's the kind of stuff I'm talking about with Marvel's version of like, I'm just like, this is a thing that you'll want to read because money. And like, I've dropped off almost every single one of the Marvel books that I read. I just can't take the mediocrity of the storytelling anymore, because it just feels like they're just like in it to make the buck and move on. And I'm sure, like, I'm not to say that some writers and artists are really not pouring their heart into the book that they're writing, but it just doesn't come across like Marvel was about the heart, and I'm just not getting that from the books that I'm reading. They're either dull or just bad. Actually, except for the Star Wars books, are super good. Darth Vader is killing it because he's Darth Vader. But that book is so good. The first 50 issues of Darth Vader was great. They restarted it with one again because it was like the first 50 issues is right after A New Hope, and now this next set is after Empire Strikes Back, and it is so... Oh, it's in it to win it. It's great.
They've been so consistent since Star Wars came back to Marvel. It's been so consistently good. Like, incredibly consistent. Like,
a part of that is
consistent.
You know what? I think a great part of that is that because it's relatively small, you don't have to worry about anything. You have to worry about the main Star Wars book, and you have to worry about maybe Darth Vader, maybe the Bounty Hunters book, maybe Dr. Aphra, and that's it. Like, that's it. There's no extra Luke Skywalker book. There's no the Adventures of Han Solo book, and if they are, they're very small, mini. Yeah. They take place over a day kind of stories. Smart. It's a smart management of that brand.
It very much is. Yeah, it's its own self-contained little universe, and they keep it. They're careful to keep it pretty confined so that it doesn't balloon out of control and to not dilute it. You were talking before about how they dilute things by restarting the numbering or making all sorts of changes that even if you're not super cynical, that in a year or two they're going to change it back. But they've resisted that temptation with Star Wars, where they've kept it they've been very careful about managing that brand, and I think that probably has a lot to do with the Lucasfilm influence on that, and the story group having pretty tight control of the reins there, and saying, we got to keep it pretty streamlined and pretty focused, because if we cave into the temptation to do too much, we risk diluting the brand.
Yep. Yeah. We don't want that.
We don't want that. We don't, and we benefit as people who enjoy it, right? We benefit by, even though there's less of it for us to read, it sort of results in generally a higher quality product for us to enjoy.
Just like anything, I'll take the high quality 6 to 10 episodes over the high quality 6 episodes, and I've also have to watch these other 16 episodes.
Yeah, that's right. That's right.
Just give me the good ones.
Let's skip the filler. Let's do 8 or 10 episodes and keep it nice and tight.
Yeah.
And I'm good with that. I'm totally good with that. And that's what they've done. And it creates more loyalty, brand loyalty. I'm not buying as much from you, but I'm more loyal and I will buy for longer from you.
That's right.
Even if I'm not buying all of it right now.
Yeah, because eventually everybody will say, I can't afford all of it right now, or I don't have time for all of it right now. But I have time for 6.
I have time for 6.
Yep. I can give you 10, 15 minutes to read one really good issue, but I can't give you 7 hours to read 40 issues.
Exactly.
I just can't do it.
Yep. So those are my thoughts on the DC shakeups. I think it's a good thing. I'm interested. I'm excited. It might actually get me to read more consistently, because I'll be able to keep up more easily and not have to read as many titles to stay caught up.
I do think there's already, like we said, there's already less of that, which is nice. Yeah.
I think that exactly what you were talking about with metal and death metal and those and the black label stuff. I think that's what proves out that this is a good idea. I think they dabbled in it, and now they're committing to it more.
You didn't have to read anything to read the Watchmen crossover. What was it called? Doomsday Clock. You didn't have to read. You could have read the button, but you didn't have to.
You didn't have to.
And then it was just a story into which they merged, and that was it. And then they were 12 issues, and they were gone. And wow, what a story that was. In those last couple of pages was 5G.
Yeah.
That
we never got to see.
Nope, not seeing that anymore. But maybe we'll see some of it in the future. I don't know.
Yeah, I'm sure they'll take some ideas from it, some story ideas from it, and still some version of it will exist, but it probably won't be called 5G, and it probably won't be exactly like it would have been. But I'm as a DC fan, I think this is a good thing, and I would be thrilled to see them be leading the industry
Leaders.
Again. Yeah, rather than it's felt like they were followers. And as a DC guy, I hated to see that. It's like when your team, never makes it to the playoffs, and
right.
It's I want to see you succeed. I want to see
come on, Mets, what are you doing? Yeah.
Oh, that's sad. But I just want to see them at least. I want to see them get to the playoffs.
Yeah.
So
we've talked about it, I think, on the podcast before, that book Slugfest, the Marvel DC rivalry story. A great book, and it really gives you a good perception of decades of company mentality, because DC was run by middle-aged white guys who were in the business for a long time, who didn't want to change anything. They weren't into it, and it took a long time. It took Marvel startup, basically. It was like a startup company, all over again, to be hello, let's do something completely different and see what happens.
Yeah.
And they've just been chasing tails since then.
I got to say, the thing from that book that struck me the most, I think it was from that book and not
Marvel Comics: The Untold Story.
I'm pretty sure it's from Slugfest, talking about how there was, I guess they got reasonably close to merging or one company buying the other. And I forget who it was, but someone from Marvel was sort of lamenting, like, oh, we could have done such great stories with their characters. What a shame it didn't happen. We could have done such great stories. And honestly, I would kill to live in that alternate reality where I could read, Superman stories told in the Marvel lens. I think that could have been really cool.
It would have been really cool, but based on what we also said about what Marvel's putting out right now, I'm so glad that didn't happen.
You're right.
At the same time, because you don't want the same company doing everything.
I don't want the same company doing everything. I don't want the same kind of dilution happening to my favorite character. Like, obviously, but maybe like the 80s or the early 90s, like that era when those things were really, really, really firing, really, really hot. That could have been interesting. Could have been really cool. I don't know.
Could have been. No, it's really cool telling people where they can find us.
BeerWithGeeks.com. You can find the show notes for this episode, where you'll find the link to Slugfest and to the articles that we talked about, and you can read more. You can find links to our Patreon, patreon.com/thoughtbubbleaudio. You can support the show, help us keep making these shows. You can find links to our other shows at thoughtbubbleaudio.com, where we and a number of our friends do a number of podcasts that are a ton of fun, so hopefully you'll check those out. You can email us at beerwithgeeks@gmail.com. You can tweet at us at beerwithgeeks. Send us show ideas. Send us your reactions to what we talked about. Send us your favorite Chinese food menu. I don't know. You can find us on Apple Podcasts and Stitcher and Spotify and Google and Amazon and everywhere that podcasts are available. And when you do that, please listen, subscribe, leave a rating or a review. If you're listening right now and you're able to, and let's face it, many of us are at home these days, why don't you leave us a 5-star review that says I love Tim Infinity +1. And then we'll know that you were listening to this episode when that happened. I am so grateful to all of you for listening and for supporting us in the various ways that you do. It means a lot to us both. But anyway, you can find us in all those places. PureWithGeeks.com. That's the main place to branch out from there.
Ditto to all the things Frank said. Wonderful. Brava. Anyway.
Thank you. So those are my opinions.
They were very good, Frank. I approve this message. I also approve saying, until next time, cheers.